when you look at the mission, you have to also, just from a application point of view, if you're a business, you also have to be able to create the environment for that. So, the mission becomes about environment, it becomes about culture. It is, wrapping your arms around your whole team and have your team actually buy into that. Why is it, do you think? And maybe what's your thoughts? You've done work with small
Yeah.
business.
I mean, I
What's the
think
challenge? What's the
it,
challenge small businesses face in doing that?
you hit on environment, right? And that's a key aspect, and it's kind of the foundational principles. Even when I'm working with a client, before we get into talking about the mission or the vision or any of those kinds of things, let's talk about the environment. What is how how and we kind of interchange environment and architecture, design, those sorts of things. All businesses have some sort of an architecture or a design. Whether it's been done consciously or not, that's up for debate, 100%. But where it's done consciously, like an environment is created, it's much easier to create an environment that calls for certain activities, certain behaviors, rather than trying to manage personalities, right? So,
Hmm.
an example of this would be you walk in, and this is just a physical one, but you can extend it. You think about walking into a church, right? And that's an environment. It's got a specific environment. You walk in and it's quiet, it's calm, it's introspective, you're
Everybody
thoughtful.
whispers.
Everybody whispers, right? That's the
Yeah.
environment calling for that. You walk across the street to the Irish bar, completely different environment, right? Like, and now it's calling for, beer and laughter and singing and dancing and all of those sorts of things. So, you know, environments are created, and when they're consciously created and thoughtfully and craftfully designed, they can call for certain different types of behaviors, right? And another example might be something like you're going on vacation. You know that you want to go on vacation with like a clear head. You don't want to be worried about work or anything like that. And suddenly you're the most productive human being on the planet. Like, you get so much done. So this argument about not having enough time suddenly goes out the window, because you've got this deadline in front of you that says you've got to get this done before then. And again, that deadline is a type of environment. Something's been put in place that kind of dictates those actions. So coming back to kind of the small business or the businesses side of things, looking and seeing what is the environment that we're designing, what is the architecture that we're creating, how are we building this such that we don't have to do all of this stuff. We can actually rely on and work with the architecture and the environment.
So let's get, I'd like to expand on this a little bit, especially in the small business world, which is kind of my sweet spot of conversation, because I think we would be remiss to not kind of wrap it some other, I guess some other language around it and some thoughts around it, because we start, I don't know that we start, but we have a mission. We've talked a little bit about mission, what that is, what that really represents. We talk about the environment. I think there's a really cool example that you gave, which is, you could be walking out of a concert, you walk across the street to the church, and it's like everything goes down. All of a sudden, you're
Right.
going from, screaming and yelling and whistling and singing loud to whispering because of the environment that creates that. And again, you walk across the street to the Irish bar and it's loud and everybody's having fun and partying and doing all the things. But inside of that environment, and this is what, when we relate that to business, is that we create mission, we create the environment for our teams to work in, but within that environment, and this is where we could maybe talk your thoughts on it, there is also a culture that comes and that kind of evolves within that, because culturally, what is the culture of your team? Now, as you know, we have in all of our businesses, but certainly within Rain, no blame, no complain, no gossip. Those are all, I mean, we don't even think in those terms anymore. It's not like we have to put in a correction for anybody, right? So it's just how we operate. And certainly within the other businesses that Stephanie and I own, that's very much how we train staff, create culture. We actually, when we do it, by the way, and this is a how-to for some small business owners that are out there, we literally at least once a year, every year, we sit down with the whole team, part-time, full-time, even contractors, and we sit down and we get together for a day, and we buy pizza and we do a whole day of just conversations. But we get to a point where we say, this is your culture, this is your environment. What does it need to represent for you? And new staff that come in or part-time staff that are coming and going, they actually design and have a discussion about, well, what did we want the environment to be? This is the footprint we're in. Well, it's got to be clean. People got to clean up after themselves. That's just one example. Somebody's got to take over and take charge of making sure that things are straightened out and put away. And so that's part of creating the environment, but it's the culture that says, that's what we want. And who are we as individuals? Well, we're teammates. We always got somebody's back. We don't gossip. We don't complain. We don't blame. We make sure that if we see somebody miss something, we pick it up. We don't, because that also goes out into, if you're front facing with clients, even if you're not front facing with clients, I mean, ultimately that goes right out to how your clients experience the business. So
yeah,
let's expand on that just a little bit, because we know that you like to talk culture too.
Yeah, well, I mean, and really what I'm hearing in all of that, Patrick, and it kind of, it may not be as conscious potentially, but I think really what you are talking about is actually it is coming back to the common mission, and there may not be the actual statement, and in some companies they may not even know that they have a mission, but Jim Collins also said that you could, when a company is operating in that level and has something that's consistent that way, whether it's stated on the wall or not, you could be an alien that gets dropped into that company, spend a day there, and know that there's something there. You might not be able to, kind of actually say what the words of that mission statement potentially are, but it's just such an essence inside that company and that organization that everything that gets created from that, in terms of how we interact with each other, what we do, it comes from that central core. And I would, if I was looking at your businesses, Patrick, I'd be saying, well, that comes from, like, ultimately as the principle, it's your business is an extension of your own personal mission or calling. We can get to this in a little bit in terms of, kind of as an individual, because this, in my opinion, applies as an individual, as a man, all of that, 100%. Right. So, when you have that idea of a central essence that is about being of service, right? And Patrick, I hear, over the years, every single time, okay, but that's great that we're doing that. But what is this actually? How is this actually being of service to the customer or to the client or to the member? How, and always, always, always coming back to that. Right. And I think also by extension, Patrick, I'll finish this. By extension, it's not even only just the client or the customer. It's also our suppliers. It's also each other. It's also other stakeholders. It's everyone. And I'll go back to the statement. It's everyone that comes into contact with our company, right? How do we want to leave them? And then again, sometimes it happens well, but I think it takes a very solid and centered, grounded, focused central group, if it's a leadership team and or a principal that's got that ethos, if you will.
Yeah, and it's important to make clear it doesn't happen by accident. I work with lots of small business owners and real estate investors, and as do you. And what we start to realize is that often we are dealing with small business owners that will say, for example, I got shitty staff. Like, I can't find good people, and or something goes wrong and it's the staff's fault. The first step in this evolution of running and operating a business in this context is that the owner or the principal, the pointy end of the spear, if you will, takes responsibility. And, I'll give you an example of, recently my general manager in one of the businesses in Edmonton phones me and he goes, and he's been with me, gosh, I think 10 or 12 years. And he goes, I don't know what to do. He says, it's tough getting staff, finding staff. But he says, I got a guy who's like going to be amazing on the sales side of things. Like, he's going to rock it from a sales side of the point of view, but he's kind of out of whack. He's a little full of himself, a little ego. I just don't know if culturally he's going to fit. What's your thoughts? And I go, well, isn't this an interesting dilemma? Because as you and I know and I said this to my general manager, I go, the challenge you're going to face, and I know what you're up against, but you're going to bring him in. If you bring him in, you better keep a really tight leash on it, because he will become the cancer that breaks down your culture of your team if you are not very, very clear, because you've got a great team, and he does. He's done a great job of building and maintaining that mission and our purpose and the culture. Like, it's a rock star team right now, and has been for a couple of years. And here we are. Now we're making a decision. But here's what's interesting about that. Now, he went on to hire him, and it's been okay. Not great, by the way, but okay. But he had a conversation with the other team, if you will, to say, this is the scenario. I think maybe what we can do is guide. Now, the point of it is this, in all of it, Nick, is that
Yeah.
when you bring somebody like that into the culture, they either adapt or they die. They adapt or they have to leave. So the point is that, but because of what we had in terms of the structure and the agreement, my general manager phones me. He goes, geez, what do you think? What's your guidance on this? I'm the old guy, so I have to ultimately help him make a decision. And the conclusion that we came to, and we're monitoring it, and actually we put him on a contract, so that it was like we give him a contract, so that if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. See you later, and thanks for that. But so far, and he's doing exactly what we thought he would do, which is being a super sales guy. And he's actually evolving and shifting into the culture and not having an impact negatively on it because people don't stand for it. But that's how important it is. So I know that's a little bit long-winded explanation.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking directly to, again, two things, or a few things that I heard there, Patrick. One is, looking at someone as a hire, right? Always what I'm doing is saying, can this person deliver our mission? And is this person consistent with our mission? And right away, and the third is, do they have the capacity, the capabilities to do the job? That's it. And that's maybe sometimes a little less important in some cases, but still important, right? But looking at that person and then going, okay, seems like it, it was a good interview or whatever, maybe not sure. But exactly what you talk about is the alignment tool that the mission is. It gets in there. It was, again, Jim Collins, who said, if somebody is in an organization and they're inconsistent with that mission, they get spit out like a virus. Like, I know that might be a dirty word these days, but that player, it's incredibly uncomfortable. If you can't step up to the level and be consistent with the mission that is, and the culture that is driving inside that organization. So out he goes, or he elevates, or she elevates, like they actually step up and into it. We had, and still today, very high, no firing, very little firing. When you actually implement a mission inside an organization and have that level, it's self-selecting, just like you talked about. It's like, you know what, I'm uncomfortable, I'm out of here, thanks so much.
Let's look at an alternative to what that could have been. Now, if we didn't have that environment, if we hadn't created that environment, that culture, that mission, that whole thought process, and this individual shows up, oh gosh, he's a great sales guy, hire him. The next thing you know, you've got 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever of those individuals, because you don't have a context, you don't have a framework to hire. And the next thing you know, what have you got? You've got really a toxic work environment. Now, sales may be great. Is your customer experience great? Not likely. Is the work environment, do people love to come to work? Yeah, maybe they like the competition. Maybe they like the drive, the sales drive that gets behind it. But mostly there's going to be a ton of gossip, a ton of bitching and complaining, and it doesn't generally last. And if you're the owner of the business, you're carrying the stress of the fires that you're putting out in the HR world. That's been my experience, and I've had lots of it over 40 years. So this is and this is not easy. Okay, we're saying intellectually and conceptually is easy to grasp, I think, but executing and initiating it takes time, it takes effort, and you're going to, have some false starts. You're going to have everybody buy in, and then they're going to buy in, and then they buy out, and then it's back and forth, and it takes time for this to evolve. And all I can say, though, is it is absolutely worth the effort. And for those entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or small business owners that are saying, how the hell do I get off the tools? How the hell do I, get out of 14-hour days and fighting fires? You have to create it. You have to work backwards from what the outcome is that you're trying to achieve. And sometimes it's challenging, especially in an environment or an economy that's questionable, but you can't seem to get good staff. That's the other side of the question.
100%. I mean, the star salesperson is always, kind of the first test often on, how committed are you to your mission statement? Like, really?
Mhm.
Let's, and it's a bit of a typecast, but that star salesperson who, the gossip, has accounting upset, has operations upset, because they're just laying waste to every kind of policy and
Yeah.
procedure to get the sale. And, and the numbers are there, but the damage that's being done, looking at the ROI on that, is that person consistent with the mission? Yes or
Mhm.
no? And it's like, you got some difficult choices to make. Usually it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly, and you go through 36 hours of tough times, and then you're back, kind of to the same where you were before that. So
But historically, I mean, and you and I both got lots of stories around it. When you clean out that type of an individual, when you let them go, or they, you know, self filter, whatever that might be, it leaves room for either somebody else on the team to step up in a powerful way, and or it leaves room for somebody else to show up that appreciates the values, appreciates the work ethic, appreciates the working
100%.
environment of the culture. And
Yeah.
so, as much as we fear losing that star salesperson, I just believe that over the years, consistently I've seen is that that empty space gets filled by somebody who you want on the team.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't know. It's almost a truth at this point, given the number of times we've probably both seen it and seen it happen, and the positive that happens as a result of making sometimes those harder decisions and choices, right?
Spend a few hours just working through this whole concept of it's your environment. You love what you do. You love your work. You take pride in it. You're professionals. What do you want it to be? How do you want it to show up? Like, what is the environment that you want it to be? Who is it?
Right.
What are the kind of guys that you want to work with? Anyways, long story short, if 10 was crap or one was crap, we'll do it that way, and he was operating at a 3, just in a few hours of working with them, they're at, he says, probably a 6 or a 7, relatively speaking. He says it's like on a vacation now relative to what it was, the fires he was fighting, and to your
Yeah.
earlier point, Nick, the personality management that goes along with that.
Yeah. And this leads into kind of a next point around the mission is the power of the mission as a decision-making tool. When
Mm-hmm.
you've got, that kind of that essence throughout the organization, that this is how we operate, and it's very, kind of well thought out, and it's throughout the whole organization, you actually can hand off a little bit more to the rest of the team, in terms of, that if they know that my mission is to deliver, let's say, magic, fun, and happiness, and the whole team knows that that's what their job is to do, then you don't have to micromanage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they'll make decisions, and if it's a customer focused, like maybe you have a wait staff, or you're, kind of in a restaurant or something like that, and the wait staff come up across various things with clients and that sort of stuff. Um, when they when you know that where they're going to go if they come up against something is, how do I leave this person with magic, fun, and happiness? You don't need
Mm-hmm.
this big thick policy manual. Like, that's what I just keep coming back to, right? It's like, you don't, will they get it wrong? Potentially, sometimes. Mostly they'll
Mm-hmm.
over deliver. They'll do like 110% versus the 100% that you would have, or 90 or 80% that you were hoping for from a policy manual. And the odd time where they get it wrong, if it's coming from a place of authenticity, like, I was really trying to deliver the mission, I just misfired. Okay, great. Good opportunity for coaching. But at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the day, it's like, when that's in, and you're hiring consistent with the mission, then you can let go of a lot of stuff. Like, you can really let your mind go to the other things that might be more important to you in the business, other than micromanaging and watching very closely.